Hi everyone, I'm just going to put together a short video about the reasons why the idea came about for a National New Ufology Conference here in Yorkshire, well on the Yorkshire-Lancashire border actually. It's nearer Lancaster than it is anywhere in Yorkshire, but the reasons for it, to be honest with you, have been with me for a good part of the last 25-30 years, even from probably the start of my own involvement with some of the major UFO groups in the UK, who, going back to the 1980s when I first got involved with local investigations around West Yorkshire, I did find that being a member of Bufora, remember I proved my worth as an investigator for Bufora back at those times under the directorship of Jenny Randalls, who later sort of laid the groundwork for ufology in the UK and possibly in other countries around the world who followed her lead. But what I really found is at that time was a case that even though I was, you might say okay and allowed to be an investigator, I was having my own personal experiences and would be called today an experiencer if the term had been around back then. But the problem was you couldn't be an experiencer and be a credible investigator with a group such as, or an organisation just say, such as Bufora. I found that very difficult, but it made me make decisions, and I'm glad I did so back at that time. One of the decisions was that if I wasn't being true to myself about my own experiences, then there wouldn't be any point in investigating UFOs, so to speak, because most of us that are involved in the subject at some level have either heard about accounts or had experiences ourselves or know somebody that has had one, and that is the thing that leads you on into thinking, well, this is very unusual, there's something different about all of this, and that's why most people do get into the subject. Look, I've seen many changes over the last 30 years, I've said, and that is the primarily difficult part for me, was that I was okay to be a speaker with Bufora at some of the major conferences, but as soon as I mentioned that I'd had contact or that I could receive information from any of these celestial beings that I was actually communicating with back then I was looked upon as being too fringe, too on the borderlines of credible ufology, and surely a person who claims these sort of things can't take a scientific approach. Well, I knew that all down the years, and I demonstrated it through investigating places like Ilkley Moor, properly investigated Cracow Fell, which I'll mention in a minute. And what I found was that there are lots of different types of people in this subject. Some are credible. Some of the people who claim to be scientific ufological investigators are quite deceptive people. I wouldn't trust them as far as I could throw them, and some of these are big names. I'm not going to go into them here because it's not a personal attack on anyone in this video. It's just to show that, the scientific term doesn't mean that we can lend a lot more weight to an investigatory case just because it's being viewed upon in that way. As I've said, there are people that you might want to say take that approach, but when you look deeply into their actual activities and what they're involved in the subject for, you find that, we know what we find. I don't want to go too far into that, really. So there's lots of different types of people involved in this subject. I don't think there's a boundary. I don't think anybody who really gets into ufology, whether it's back then or now, does so because they just want to go out and prove one way or another a definitive case of what these things are, because I don't think we can do that. We don't have the experience at this time to be able to do that, but what we do have are many leads, many cases that have been given to us by the groundwork of people such as Stan Freeman, I mentioned Jenny Randalls, even the Birdsall brothers, Graham and Mark Birdsall back in the 80s, lots and lots of people. I could just give you name after name after name that have highlighted themselves within ufology. But the problem is we don't seem to be moving away from this sort of ethos of let's scientifically investigate the case, but let's just then file it away as either an unknown or an identified or as a C1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. The problem is we're doing nothing with the data, and one of the things I think that we should look at, and why I actually got into portal investigations, was that you can look at these old cases again with new eyes. Basically, we can use the modern technology that we have today. We can go to these sites again and think about how ufology has progressed. You know, I go to what I call portal areas and find that coincidentally there are two factors there that were overlooked quite a lot back in the scientific UFO days, and that's that many of these places where people have had classic UFO encounters, they're on ancient sites or energy lines. They're actually portal areas. I'm not saying every single case is, so we'd have to look in a different direction for them, but many of them are. So there must be a link of some kind, as far as I'm concerned, there. And it's finding out by looking at the weight of evidence that these people did the groundwork, you know, on back in the 80s, 90s, into the noughties, that we've got something to work on now. Let's use it. Let's not just, you know, think, well, that were a classic case, and what more can we do about it? There's plenty we can do about it. We can have a look at the area again. We can look at it with new eyes, as I've said, and we can look at it with new ideas, and that's what I hope new ufology will allow us to do. It's not all about trying to prove that all these things have got either an interdimensional or an alien origin, or that, you know, we know exactly what UFOs are. It's not about that. I don't think many of us on this planet have that answer. If anybody at all, the complete answer, so to speak. I mean, to give you an example, I was heavily involved in the 80s and 90s with the Ilkley alien photographic case, even though I wasn't part of the main investigatory body. I was monitoring it myself and came to my own conclusions about it. Even though I believe that Ilkley Moor is a hotspot for genuine UFO cases that may be off this world, interdimensional, so to speak, I do believe that the Ilkley alien case probably was a hoax, and there is good evidence for that has never been released because of the way the original scientific approach to the case was taken. And also another thing that comes up in the past that we need to get rid of, and that's this almost like ego-based, let's keep every case to ourselves, differential that groups tend to still do today. You know, it's our case and we're going to investigate it, and we're not prepared to share the data. Now, I was very lucky because I lived in the Ilkley Moor area, so I could do my own investigations at the actual site where it happened, and came up with all sorts of things that I was quite happily, as you'll see down the years, to share with everybody. And what that led me to, only a few years back, is to actually understanding the case a lot better and actually finding out just who the person behind the actual, I'm not going to call it a hoax because I'm not too sure it was a hoax, but I do think it is a misidentification of something, and that will be coming out shortly. Will be the subject of a new book and a new talk that I plan for the future. It's interesting because I listened to a radio program this morning being beamed out from the States, and even MUFON, you know, this what you might say in inverted commas most credible scientific UFO body, are now feeling that this has gone on for too long. They need to change their actual ideology and approach, almost to the degree that they're saying basically, you know, we believe there's something there that all this evidence weighs up to, and we've got to do something with it. And that's exactly what new ufology here in the UK needs to do as well. A couple of questions now that I've been asked regarding new ufology and the conference itself. One of them that was given to me in an email a couple of days ago was, is ufology an attack on established UFO conferences? Well, of course not. I mean, I'm still a supporter of a number of UFO conferences that are ongoing in the UK. I'm a regular attender of the Probe conference at Live and St Anne's, and have been for many years, and actually speak at that conference. Some people might say, well, that's not a scientific UFO conference, but what it has been prepared to do for many years is look at all sorts of angles towards UFOs. But again, we need to, if we're going to concentrate on ufology as such, as which I intend to do, although we can't leave out the other areas of the paranormal because they do overlap without a shadow of a doubt in many cases. We do find at a Probe that we do get all sorts of different speakers for different subjects, so that waters down the attempt that New Ufology and the New Ufology Conference hopes to establish, and that's to look at evidence that's ongoing, current investigations, and past cases to see them in a new light. It's not an attack on any of the established conferences, although I will say that one or two here in the UK do tend to just run on the same lines. And don't get me wrong, there's a place for everything in this subject, I'm sure, but they're on the same lines that we've been running for the last sort of like 25 years, in that they'll get the established speakers over from maybe the US and other countries, and talk about classic cases such as Roswell or alien abductions, mainly from the US. And this is the problem. This is the problem we've got. These people are just constantly regurgitating. In fact, I've been to a few conferences, I'm sure people that are watching this may have done themselves, but they go and see the same speaker give exactly the same talk on several occasions, and getting paid for this, you know, from initial work they did, granted, but why has nothing moved on from that? Why is it just the same? You know, you might as well just go out and buy a book and read it. You can always pick that book up again and read it again, can't you? But you're not going to learn a lot more unless you expand your knowledge and look further into what that book's giving you, the information and the base there, basically, to take things forward. So no, we're not attacking anybody. It's not an attack on the old ways of ufology. If people that are running these conferences here in the UK want to carry on doing that, that's their privilege, you know, and I'm sure I'll still support that angle, no matter what, really. Other questions, can we still use the scientific principle if we take the new ufology path? Well, I think I've already mentioned that before. Yes, we can. I already have. I've shown as an example that it's quite possible to take the scientific approach, and also to keep one foot in that area of investigation, but also at the same time be aware, be intuitive, be able to be open-minded about other possibilities. And really, if we look at it, modern day science has actually shown us that this is the correct way to go. You know, this is what we should be doing. Even with science, it's throwing up all these new possibilities, and to say that, you know, we just base ufology on a few principles that originated some 25-30 years ago and possibly before that, is ridiculous, really. I mean, we want to take the subject forward in a credible way, but also in a way that people are going to say, hey, look, we're making new ground in this, we're finding out things that we didn't look at before, and this is taking us off into different angles of possibility. And by doing that, history shows us you dare to dream and you find resolution, you know, you find solution, and you find the actual origin of source eventually. It may take a little while, but it will come. Another question, is a holistic approach to studying UFOs better, and if so, can we say where UFOs are from? Well, of course, the scientific approach will tell you that UFOs are just that, unidentified flying objects, and that is true. But again, I take the approach myself personally, and I hope people that come to the new UFO conference will understand this, that we're not really bothered about cases and the mountain of millions of cases worldwide that show that there is a percentage, and much higher than 5% to 10% that has been bounded down the years. If you really want to look at cases properly, there's a higher percentage, definitely, that show something very unusual takes place in a lot of these experiences, something that we can put down to everyday reality. And that is the problem, really, that as human beings we tend to look for the rational, and maybe this subject is not rational at all. You know, maybe we have to think outside of the box a little bit more and dare to tread with one foot, as I've said, into this other realm, yet keeping a level head in the scientific approach. The two can be combined. I know there are scientists out there saying that's ridiculous, you can't do it. You can. Honestly, I've been doing it for 25 years, and I can prove I've been doing it by looking back at my old case reports and things. I'll give you an example. I mentioned Cracoe Fell, the case in North Yorkshire back in 1981. Now, that was investigated by the Yorkshire UFO Society under Graham Birdsall at that time, but quickly soon became sort of realised as being a misidentification of sunlight glaring off rocks, although the original photograph did look like some sort of structured craft that had landed on the side of the rocky fell. Now the thing is, Because I lived in the area again, I was able to go to the site. It didn't take me very long to actually find out exactly what it was. There was no great UFO mystery there. I took the scientific approach. I went to the site, made photographic, photographs of the place, got the same evidence on photographs that showed what it was, in the same light conditions. And these were replicated, by the way, by Andy Roberts sometime after I left the Independent UFO Network, which he'd formed just after, as I say, I left, and took it upon himself to then write books saying that he'd actually found out what the source of the Craig-Opel UFO was, which again, it was quite a big name for many years within the UFO circles, but I knew all the way down there that his credibility was ego-based. It must have been, because he knew he was lying all of that time. And recently he gives me half credit. I've noticed he started to do that. It's in saying that I'd actually been to the site, but I hadn't replicated the photographs exactly. Well, okay, but that's what happens. What I'm trying to say is that if I was a person that just wanted to change ufology into like a new age, new way of looking at this subject so that we can say that aliens definitely exist and this and the other, although personally people that know me know that I believe that we can communicate with interdimensional entities, and I work towards trying to find evidence for that. The problem is that there are people in the subject that just, have they got the right motives, have they got the right ego-based morals to actually go about this subject in the proper way? That is something that we need to look at, and scientifically I can look at that case over and over again, and we'll come to the same conclusions that what was on the fell was definitely some kind of light form, that was being produced by sunlight on wet rocks. But what it doesn't take away from the facts with the same scientific approach is that all around that area, Grassington, stretching right out north and south basically of that area, right up to Wilkley Moor in the south, in fact, you'll find that there are interesting and genuine UFO cases that seem pretty similar to that do not have an explanation, even with the scientific approach. So that doesn't mean that we can rule out one case and it rules out all of them. We have to look at every case individually, but go back over them again, and look with new eyes, new insight and new intuition, and think, what could this possibly be? And that's where we'll find the answer, not by just doing things in the same old way, and certainly not by just regurgitating old cases, hoping that suddenly, out of nowhere, there'll be something that'll spring up in those cases that was never written down at any point, that tells us what it is. So that is the problem really we've got. And it's not a problem, it's a solution, new ufology, a solution I hope that many people will start to think about and will try to support. And by doing that, by coming to the conference, by listening to the speakers that have this approach and have done for so many years now, will understand that this is moving in a very, very positive direction. Okay, what are the aims of the conference? Well, the National New Ufology Conference, which we're holding in High Bentham, has basically the aims I've just been talking about in the video, is to try and move ufology on into the next century at least, and into new generations, so we can pass down a new way of approaching this subject. If people are just stuck with the same old, how can I put it, I don't know, instruction booklet of how to be a ufologist, and believe you me, you can pick them up on the internet by major groups I've mentioned before, MUFON and other organisations that tell you what it takes to be a ufologist. What it will not tell you is anything outside the scientific approach, and that is a shame, because that's where it needs to change. What we need are people that, I say, have certain well, it's a pretty simple and human trait, and I'm sure many people within the subject have already got it, and that's the ability to be more, I don't know, forthwith, to actually go to places and experience different aspects. I mean, for example, there's one case where I went to, and somebody said, let's look for ground traces there because there's been a UFO landing there. But the first thing I felt when I got there were feelings, different feelings about the area. it held its own atmosphere. It was very strange to begin with. So that led me on then to look into other things, and believe you me, I found eventually that very close by there was another UFO landing case that happened years before. Without looking and feeling, looking into the feelings of that area, never mind the ground trace, that probably, well, may have come across eventually, but certainly not in my view, you know, wouldn't have been there that day. So they're the type of things we need to look at, is to actually use human responses to the cases. You know, somebody said to me about Roswell, wouldn't it be great if we could go back to maybe into the military hospital and see what's going on there? You know, and I said, well, you can. There are people that remote view, the remote view through time. Let's go do that. Let's experiment. Let's remote view. You know, back to the time of Roswell. Be in that hospital. Be next to the guy that, if there wasn't an alien autopsy, be next to the guy that was doing it. Let's feel what he was feeling. Let's see what he wrote down on little notes. Let's find out more evidence. And there are ways of doing this. Scientists say, well, that's impossible, it's not going to give you any concrete evidence. But if enough people do it and enough people come up with the same information, then it is credible. It's showing by weight of evidence that something more likely happened, and it will lead on to new avenues of evidence. Basically, it will take people into a new way of looking at it. We know this. I mean, it's cause and effect. You decide to go out and do something in a particular way, you can guarantee there'll be an effect from it. If we sit back and do nothing and just rely on case after millions and millions of cases that seem to just be, what time of day, what colour was it in the sky, did it make a sound, did it land in this particular spot, has anybody else seen it, could you show me on an elevation exactly where? If we just look at all those almost like repetitive questions, we're not going to find anything out more than what we've found out already, because if we would, we'd have found it out by now. So something is telling us we're not quite doing this in the right way, and that's what ufology is about. I hope you'll take that on board, and it's been great speaking to you. I'm out here in Bentham today in the sunny, well, I'm actually in the graveyard by the church. I'll just pop it round so you can have a look. There you go. So I'm just sat here doing this little video really to put on the conference website. It's an introduction to what we're going to be about. I hope you'll come along. I hope you'll support it. The tickets are on sale on the Yapsody ticket website. They're at £15 each. We've got some amazing speakers, including Tony Toppin, we've got Kevin Goodman, we've got Derek Savory and Brenda Butler. All these people, and many more, you know, all these people have actually looked at the subject of UFOs from their own particular insights, feelings and developed ways, basically, and I'm very proud to have them, you know, on board. All of them. Laura Sayers I've got there, we've got, you know, some fantastic people. We've got Alison Dunlop, she runs her own radio show, and bless her heart, you know, she's open-minded enough to look at this subject. She's going to be talking about the connection to do with, you know, aliens and fairies. Why is there a crossover there? Will the scientific approach actually show that there is? She'll be explaining that. We've got also Phil Medley. Phil Medley's a wonderful man. He's on a mission very much like myself. In fact, I'm proud to call him my cosmic brother. He's going around, you know, basically different places around the world using his music and his insight and his connection with beings to actually bring in new insights that we can use. We can use, you know, the information that Phil brings around to take on this subject. Another guy very similar is Alien Bill Rook. Bill's got such a wonderful energy about him. You know, you just can't stop laughing at his little puns and his jokes, and he brings such a light entertainment to the subject he's sorely missed. Can that be scientific in approach? Of course it can, because at the same time he's bringing you the real evidence. He's bringing you photographic evidence. He goes out there, he feels the areas, he communicates and contacts with the areas that he's getting these photographs from, and, you know, ufology's fun. It's got to be. I mean, it's part of humanity, and we have, you know, we have that love and laughter within us all. So let's bring this to the conference. Let's show people that what we're about, and let's make this happen. Great talking to you guys. Bye.